We know you can buy anything on the Darknet. Illicit substances, weapons, even people. But can you buy freedom on the Darknet? Without intrigue, the answer to this question is yes, you can. 37 bodies. That's just the official statistics for one river. 37 men paid between $5,000 and $7,000 for a guaranteed trip. Not one made it to the other side alive. My name is Mr. Dark Web, and today I'm going to show you a market where freedom, not commodities, is traded for bitcoins. The 24th of February in the year 2022. This date has been remembered by millions, but for many, it meant more than just the beginning of the war. It was the day their country was turned into a cage. On the same day, the Ukrainian president signed a decree on general mobilization. Men from 18 to 60 years old were forbidden to leave the territory of the country. Some took it as a patriotic duty, some took it as a death sentence, and some immediately started looking for a way out. Just a few hours after mobilization was announced, chaos broke out at the borders. Thousands of cars queued to leave. Men tried to cross the border before the system was fully operational. Many made it, but most did not. By the end of the first 24 hours, the border was closed completely. The border guards received clear instructions. No men of conscription age were to leave the country. The checks were tightened. The databases started working in real time. Even those who had the right to leave for health or other reasons faced a bureaucratic hell. And it was at this point that the market was born. The first announcements appeared as early as the third day of the war. In Telegram channels, on forums, in closed groups. Some offered help sincerely, acquaintances, relatives abroad, volunteers, but very quickly, completely different people joined the flow. We will help you to go abroad, legally, safe, guarantee. Prices were not openly quoted in the first few weeks. They wrote carefully, details in private messages. But those who were desperate to find a way out quickly found the right contacts. At first, it was a single offer, then dozens, then hundreds. By the end of March 2022, the market was already working as a well-oiled mechanism. Specialized channels had appeared. There were price lists. There were testimonials. Yes, exactly the reviews, just like a normal online shop. 5 stars. Everything went fine. I recommend it. 1 star, they cheated, no refund. Only the product here was not a parcel of clothes, but a human life. The demand was enormous. As the war dragged on, more and more people wanted to leave. Some didn't want to fight on principle. Some feared for their lives. Some simply did not believe in victory and wanted to save themselves and their families. By the summer of 2022, the territorial recruitment centers began to work more aggressively. Men were stopped on the streets, their documents were checked, and summonses were handed out on the fly. Videos appeared on social networks of people being literally grabbed and taken onto buses. Some called it a necessity. Some called it lawlessness. But the fact remained that it had become almost impossible to leave legally. The list of grounds for departure was reduced to a minimum. Even those with serious health problems faced refusals. Certificates were not accepted. Documents were lost. The bureaucratic machine worked to cut off any attempts to leave the country, and that's when people started paying. The market split into several segments. There were those who offered supposedly legal ways of traveling through the system, which we will look at later. There were those who sold forged documents. There were those who organized physical crossings across the border, on foot, by swimming, over mountains. And they all used the same communication channels. Telegram became the main platform. Anonymity, encryption, the ability to create closed channels. All this made the messenger an ideal tool. Ads were placed in open channels. Negotiations were conducted in private messages. Payment was accepted in cryptocurrency, but there were also those who went further. On Darknet forums, sections dedicated specifically to traveling out of Ukraine appeared. They published detailed instructions, routes, and contacts of guides. There you could find offers for any budget, from $5,000 to $20,000 on average. Some called it business, some called it a rescue, and some called it the most cynical scam imaginable. Because behind every ad were real people. Some of them were actually helping. Some of them were just robbing desperate people. And some of them were sending them to their deaths. By the end of the year 2022, the statistics were appalling. The border guard detained 20 to 25 people every day who tried to cross the border illegally. Some were trying to pass through forests. Some tried to swim across rivers. Some tried to bribe the border guards, and some of them never came back. The first bodies began to be found in spring, in the Tisa River, which divides Ukraine and Romania, in the mountains on the border with Moldova, in the forests near the Polish border. Men of different ages, with different stories, but with one thing in common. They had all paid someone for the promise of freedom. And that was just the beginning, because the market wasn't just working, it was growing, it was evolving, it was turning into a real industry where every element was thought out to the last detail. From social media adverts to crossing logistics, from legalization schemes to money laundering. And now I'm going to show you how it all works from the inside. When people are desperate for a way out, they are willing to believe anything, especially if it looks legal, especially if you can pass through a checkpoint with a stamp in your passport rather than crawling through the forest at night. It was on this desire that one of the most massive schemes grew up. It was called simply shliach, which translated means the way. The system existed before the war to simplify the work of transport companies. Carriers with licenses entered their drivers into a database, and they crossed the border freely. No unnecessary checks. Name on the list. Border open. With the beginning of mobilization, the system was expanded. Now it included volunteers carrying humanitarian aid. The Ministry of Infrastructure and regional administrations were given the right to submit lists of people to transport medical supplies. And that's where the business started. Anyone could get on the list. All they had to do was find the right company or pay. By the summer of 2022, hundreds of adverts appeared in Telegram channels. Legal exit via shliach. Registration in 3 days. Guarantee of passing the border. The cost ranged from $1,000 to $2,000. Someone promised a deposit for one trip, someone for a month. Someone advertised a reservation for a year. The mechanics were simple. A person contacted an intermediary, sent documents, and made an advance payment of 30 to 50%. A few days later, he received confirmation. Then he traveled through the checkpoint with a stamp and a record in the database. On paper, it's all legal. The man was listed as a driver of humanitarian cargo. The border guard saw the recording and let him through. But it was an illusion. Competition was growing fast, and with competition came stocks. In the summer, a major channel announced a special offer. The price dropped from $2,000 to $700. Limited time. Hurry up. A campaign to escape the country. Absurd, but people went along with it. Fear is stronger than logic. When you see your neighbors being taken away by force, questions of legality disappear. Some middlemen worked honestly. They entered the data. People traveled out. The scheme worked for months. but many people were simply robbed. A person paid, received confirmation, went to the border and found out that his name was not in any database. There was no registration. The intermediary disappeared. There was no one to complain to. You yourself tried to circumvent the mobilization. Warnings appeared regularly in Telegram channels. Beware, scammers, don't get involved. And sometimes it was worse. People were detained at the border. Criminal cases were opened. Some got fines, some got suspended sentences, some went to the front. If you were caught running away, they would not be discreet. But Shliach was not the only scheme. There was a market for forged documents. Military IDs are the most popular option. A person would buy a fake, pretend to be a serviceman on leave. Some managed to get through, but most were caught. Border guards were checking databases. Disability certificates are another way. According to the law, people with certain disability groups could travel. But after the scandals, the checks were tightened so that even real disabled people had problems. The prices for quality fakes were up to several thousand. They promised documents with holograms and real seals. But without a record in the database, even the best fake didn't work. The use of false documents was punishable by a fine or up to 2 years in prison, plus immediate sending to the military enlistment center. By 2023, the authorities began to tighten the screws. In August, the president dismissed many of the regional heads of the TCC because of bribes. Medical certificates of release were sold for $6,000. Entire schemes were operating inside military commissions. The purge was massive, but it didn't solve the problem. Demand remained. The Shliach system continued to work, but the risks were growing. The inspections were getting tougher. Companies were disconnected from the system. Those caught were given real terms. In February 2025, the system for drivers of humanitarian cargoes was finally closed, officially to develop a new mechanism. Unofficially, because the scheme had become a blatant exit trade. But the market didn't disappear. It has switched to other methods. As long as the border is closed, as long as people are willing to pay, someone will sell hope. When legal avenues are blocked, people go where there are no rules at all. Telegram channels, Darknet forums, where a deal can be done in 10 minutes and the trail erased in a second. This is where the real market grew up, with price lists, reviews, promotions, just like a normal online shop. Only the product is one, a chance to check out, and there's never a return guarantee. Telegram has become the main platform. Encryption, anonymity, the ability to create a channel in a minute and delete it in a second. By the spring of 2022, there were hundreds of channels offering help in moving out. The names were neutral: help in moving, advice on documents, legal exit. No direct wording. It was all innuendo. Typical advert: help with travel, different options, confidential, details in private messages. The person wrote in a private message. The administrator asked questions: age, city, passport. Then offered options: legal processing, physical crossing, fake documents, each with its own price and risk. The standard scheme is 30% immediately, the rest after the crossing. But many demanded 50% or the whole amount in advance. Without money, nothing would start, and people paid. Competition was fierce. Marketing techniques came into play. Testimonials, screenshots of correspondence from supposedly satisfied customers. Everything went great. Already in Poland, I recommend it. Most of them are fake, but how can you tell the difference? Photo and video. Customers at the border, already in Germany. Proof of work. Easy to fake, but impossible to verify. Guarantees. They promised a refund, reimbursement of attorney's fees. In practice, it never worked. The administrator just blocked and disappeared. Intermediaries appeared. They did not organize the crossings themselves, but knew the performers. They took a percentage for communication. It created word of mouth. Brother went away, told another, passed it on. Chains of trust. When an acquaintance says that his brother really left through a particular guide, it is more convincing than an anonymous advert. Many organizers worked in this way, not through open channels, but through acquaintances. Less risk, more trust. But Telegram is not the only platform. There was a Darknet. For those who are not familiar, the Darknet is a part of the Internet, accessed through special programs like Tor. Everything illegal is traded there. Drugs, weapons, documents, and travel services. Sections dedicated to traveling out of Ukraine have appeared on Darknet forums. Announcements, routes, experiences. Anonymity is higher than in Telegram. It's untraceable. That's why the riskiest schemes work there. Prices from $1,500 to $20,000. Payment exclusively in cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, Ethereum, Monero. No trace, no way to get your money back. There was a reputation system that worked on the forums, rating based on reviews, but it was also faked. Sellers bought positive reviews, gained reputation, collected money from dozens of clients, and disappeared. Exit scam. Classic scam. It's untraceable. No one on the Darknet knows your name or address. Just your cryptocurrency wallet. The money's gone forever. But there were those who kept their promises, worked for years, built up a real reputation. Their contacts were passed on only to the trusted ones. The services were more expensive, but people paid. They knew they were not being cheated. One such organizer said he had helped several hundred people in 2 years, including military deserters. The price for a military man is higher. The risks are greater. Work through people I know. No adverts, only recommendations. Payment in installments, in advance and after the crossing. I used the Hawala system. The money was with the intermediary and was given to the guide only after confirmation of success. By 2044, whole agencies had sprung up, dozens of people. Advertising, negotiations, itineraries, braving border guards. They worked as companies, offices abroad, lawyers, accountants, comprehensive services, crossing, documents, accommodation, work. The prices were from $10,000 to $20,000. Customers paid. It looked more reliable. I wanted to believe that for that kind of money you'd get service. Sometimes you did. More often it didn't. The online market has become one of the most cynical phenomena of war. The desperation of people, the greed of scammers, corruption, and the indifference of the system. Telegram channels, Darknet forums, word of mouth, a single ecosystem. Some were making millions. Some were losing their last savings. Some got a chance. And some were walking towards death. The digital bazaar is only the first level. Behind the adverts is reality, the physical border, mountains, rivers, border guards, and bodies in the water. Behind every advert on the internet is a physical reality, cold water, steep mountains, and the bodies that rescuers find, 37. The official figure is for one river only. 37 men drowned in the Tisa trying to reach Romania, but the real number could be much higher. Not all the bodies are found. The river doesn't always give up its victims. The Tisa is a mountainous river in the west of Ukraine. dividing the country with Romania and Hungary. Fast-flowing, up to 7 or 8 meters deep, cold water even in summer. In winter it is icy. In spring it is turbulent and unpredictable. Dozens, perhaps hundreds of men tried to escape mobilization through it. The guides said it was the easiest way. For 4,000 or 5,000 euros, they promised a guaranteed crossing. The ferrymen worked according to a scheme. They gathered a group of 3 or 4 people. They would meet at night near the shore. They gave out wetsuits, often poor quality fakes for $50. They said it was an easy walk. It was a lie. The border guard inspector explained, physical ability does not determine success. A deep river, fast current, roots clinging to clothes, even a professional swimmer can fail. But people came, paid the money, a family sold a car or a flat. The fear of mobilization was stronger than the fear of water. Many admitted they realized it was dangerous. But when 3 others went into the water, they followed. Everyone went, and I went. In May 2024 alone, 10 bodies were found in Thais. 1 month. By August, the death toll had reached 37. By the end of the year, according to unofficial data, it was closer to 50. Every body is a story. 33-year-old man from Kharkov. Paid $5,000. Promised to cross the checkpoint. Instead, swim across the Tisa at night. The body was found in March. 2 in April. Border guards found them in the evening. The strong current did not allow them to be pulled out at once. They waited until morning. A man was pulled out of the icy water in a semi-conscious state in January. Paid $5,000. He was just shown where to swim across. At night. In freezing water. Alone. Miraculously survived. But the Tisa was not the only route. Many went through the mountains, Carpathians on the border with Romania and Moldova. In winter, snow and frost. In summer, heat. Always a risk of getting lost. Nearly 45 bodies were found in rivers and mountains on the western frontier. Official statistics up to the middle of 2024. The real number is higher. The trek took from hours to days. The guides led the groups at night without lanterns. One wrong step and a breakdown. In winter, you could freeze. In summer, you could die of dehydration. Some walked without guides. Internet coordinates, maps by themselves. Lottery. Some got through. Some wandered for 24 hours. Some never came out. There was a danger of a different kind. Transnistria, an unrecognized republic controlled by pro-Russian forces. Many routes went through this zone. Locals reported that evaders were often trapped. They were tortured, demanded money, and enslaved. Held for weeks. Robbed. Handed over to the Ukrainian authorities for a reward. One fugitive told me that crossing Transnistria was the worst. Not because of the physical difficulties, but because of the people. Corruption, criminality, impunity. You can't complain. The ferryman promised a safe route for 4,000 or 5,000 euros. In practice, it's just a direction. Go this way, swim across here, no guarantees. Border guards regularly rescued people, pulled them out of the water. They found exhausted people in the mountains, but not everyone was rescued in time. Detention statistics, 20 to 25 people every day. Only those who were caught. How many passed through? We don't know. How many died? Also unknown. Authorities stepped up patrols. Lighting was installed. Discussions were held to mine the approaches. But the idea was rejected. The emergency services have warned. Water levels are rising. Temperatures are low. Currents are rising. Deadly. But the warnings weren't working. The alternative seemed worse. Stay, get a summons. The summons was a front. The front, possibly death. A choice between two risks, the river or war. For many, the former seemed the lesser evil. By 2025, the situation had not improved. Almost 100,000 Ukrainians left the country in 2 months, most of them legally, but thousands did not. The border with Moldova and Romania remained popular. There were fewer joint operations. Poland worked in coordination with Ukraine. No chance there. Everybody is not just a statistic. A man with a family, children maybe, parents waiting for the call. Instead of calling, the border guards came. They reported the find, asked them to come. The families had to take the body and bury it. No compensation, no investigation. It's impossible to find the traffickers. No refunds. The money went into cryptocurrency. Just grief and questions. Was it worth it? Was there an alternative? Who was to blame? There are no answers. There is only the river. Cold, indifferent, deadly, and new announcements on Telegram. We'll help you with the exit. Guarantee, right in person. How much is freedom worth? It is a philosophical question. But in this market, freedom has a very specific price, from $500 to $20,000. It depends on the route, the number of intermediaries, and the level of risk. The price list is clear. Each service has its own cost. Each step has its own surcharge. This is a business where everything is calculated to the cent, where emotions don't matter, where human life is just a commodity with a certain margin. The cheapest option is to try to cross it yourself using coordinates from the internet. In fact, it is free of charge. A person finds a forum, downloads maps, reads instructions, and goes by himself. No guarantees, maximum risk, but also no cost. The next level is buying coordinates and counseling. $300 to $500. Someone who supposedly knows the route is selling information. Where to cross the border, when there are the least border guards, how to avoid patrols. Just information. No escort, no help. Next comes the physical help. A guide who will take you to the border and show you the way, but won't go with you. $500, $2,000. Meeting at the agreed place. A short briefing, giving directions. You're on your own. A full escort across the border, from $3,500 to $5,000. The guide goes with the group, shows the route, and helps physically. If across a river, there may be a boat or wetsuits. If through the mountains, a night crossing with stops. But prices varied widely, depending on the particular circumstances. The route through Moldova was considered relatively cheap, from $3,000 to $8,500. The border was less guarded and the distances shorter. However, there was a risk of getting into Transnistria, where they could be robbed or extorted for extra money. Crossing the Tisa is between $5,000 and $10,000. Physically dangerous, but popular. Many guides worked in this direction. Competition kept prices relatively stable. Crossing the Carpathians to Romania, from $6,000 to $10,000. It is more difficult physically, requires more time, and there is a higher risk of being apprehended in the mountains. Legal registration through corrupt officials, from $10,000 to $20,000. The most expensive option, but formally safe. The documents are in order, the stamps are in place, and you pass through an official checkpoint. However, there is a risk that the scheme will be uncovered. For military men who deserted from the front, the prices were higher, sometimes twice as much, because the risks for the organizers are greater. If they catch a civilian evader, it's one article. If a military deserter is caught, it's a different matter. Plus, the military are more actively monitored. Databases are checked more thoroughly. There were special cases. People who were sought by the SBU or the military prosecutor's office. They asked for up to $20,000 for them. Because they needed forged documents of the highest quality, special routes, bribery of several links at the border. A complex operation, but the price of the service is just the tip. The real interest is in the financial mechanics of the transactions. How do you pay people you don't know? How do you guarantee that you won't get ripped off? How can a guide be sure that the client will pay after the crossing? Bank transfers were not suitable for obvious reasons. They leave a trace, require documents, and can be blocked. Cash is also a problem. How do you transfer large sums of money without meeting in person? How can you be sure it's not a provocation? And that's where cryptocurrency came into play. Bitcoin has become the main currency of this market. The reasons are clear. Transfers are fast, relatively anonymous, and do not require intermediaries in the form of banks. No one can block a transaction. No one can track who sent the money and to whom, if you use the right tools. More advanced market participants used Monero or other private cryptocurrencies. There, anonymity is even higher. It is almost impossible to trace a transaction even if you want to. The scheme of work was simple. A client bought cryptocurrency through an exchanger or exchange. He transferred part of the sum to the organizer's wallet. This was a prepayment, usually 30 to 50%. The rest was to be transferred after successfully crossing the border. But here the problem of trust arose. The client could fail to pay the balance after already on the other side. The organizer could take an advance payment and disappear without providing the service. A guarantee mechanism was needed. And then came the hawala. For those who are not familiar with this system, I will explain in more detail. Hawala is an ancient informal money transfer system that has been around for hundreds of years. It originated in the Middle East and South Asia. It works on trust and reputation. The principle is simple. There are two brokers, hawaladars, one in country A, the other in country B. They know each other, trust each other, perhaps relatives or longtime partners. You go to a hawaladar in country A, give him money. He calls his partner in country B. He gives an equivalent amount to your recipient. That's it. No banks, no paperwork, no international transfers. The money didn't physically cross the border, but it actually moved. The commission is low, about 3%, much lower than in banks or systems like Western Union. The speed is high, from a few minutes to a few hours. Anonymity is absolute, no records, no traces. In the context of escape from Ukraine, hawala worked a little differently. The hawaladar acted not just as a translator of money, but as a guarantor of the deal. The client would hand over the entire amount to the hawaladar. He kept the money with him. The client tried to cross the border with the help of a guide. If successful, he informed the hawaladar. The latter verified the information and gave the money to the guide. If the client was delayed or died, the hawaladar returned the money to the family. If the guide did not fulfill his obligations, the money was also returned. Hawaladar took his percentage, usually 5 to 7% of the amount. It was money for risk and for trust, because a good hawaladar was worth his weight in gold. His reputation took years to build. One cheat, and his reputation was ruined forever. But the system only worked if the hawaladar was really reliable, and it was difficult to check this in advance. Therefore, many people relied on recommendations. A brother left through a particular intermediary. The money went through a particular hawaladar. Then you can trust him. Word of mouth again played a key role. Good hawaladars were passed on by word of mouth. Their contacts were valued. They had queues of people lining up to see them. Bad havaladars were also becoming known. Information that someone had cheated a client or a guide spread quickly. After that, no one would work with such a middleman. But there were those who used the system for their own ends. Fake hawaladars. People who posed as guarantors of a deal. Collected money from a few clients and disappeared. Classic scam. One such case was publicized in Telegram channels. A man who introduced himself as an experienced hawaladar accepted money from 15 clients. The total amount was over $100,000. He promised to guarantee their crossing through Moldova. He took the money in cryptocurrency and disappeared. The conductors claimed they had never worked with the man. Clients tried to track him down, but the Darknet leaves no trace. Cryptocurrency is untraceable if you know how to cash it properly. The money's gone, the man is gone, case closed. Besides Hawala and cryptocurrency, there were more primitive methods: cash and envelopes, transmission through couriers, payment after crossing through relatives. But all these methods were less popular. There are too many risks, too many links in the chain where something could go wrong. Cryptocurrency plus Hawala is the gold standard of this market. Fast, relatively safe, difficult to trace. That's why most serious organizers worked exactly according to this scheme. Interestingly, some hawaladars provided additional services, not only guarantees of transactions, but also storage of funds. A person transferred money to the havaladar in advance, several months before the planned escape. The money was kept safe, out of reach of the Ukrainian authorities. When the time came, they were used for their intended purpose. This was especially true for those who feared confiscation of property or blocking of accounts. Money transferred to a hawaladar was outside the system. They could not be found, arrested, taken away. They existed only as a commitment between two people. Some hawaladars kept sums as high as $500,000. This was the money of dozens of clients who were preparing to escape. Huge risk and huge responsibility, but also a huge profit. A percentage of each transaction, plus the opportunity to use the money for investments while it was in storage. The economy of this market was built on distrust and fear. No one trusted anyone, but everyone needed each other. Customers needed guides. Conductors needed guarantees of payment. Havaladars needed reputations. Everyone needed cryptocurrency as a medium of exchange, and the system worked. Not perfectly. With losses, with deception, with tragedy. But it worked. Because the demand was huge. Because people were willing to pay. Because the fear of war was stronger than the fear of financial loss. Money flowed in rivers. From Ukraine to cryptocurrencies, from cryptocurrencies to havaladars, from havaladars to conductors, from conductors to corrupt officials. A huge underground economy built on human desperation. Millions of dollars that cannot be traced, counted, seized. Money that doesn't smell, even when it smells like death. The most lucrative business in this story was not conducted by the guides, not the hawaladars. The biggest money was made by those who had to stop the escapes. The border guards, TCC officers, military, officials. They had power. They decided who to detain, who to let through, who to release, who to send to the front. And that power had a price. Territorial recruitment centers. TCCs are military enlistment centers. They decided whether you were fit for service or not. From there you were sent to the front. And corruption was rampant there. medical certificate of exemption from service, a document confirming that a person cannot serve due to health reasons, asthma, diabetes, heart problems. The list is long. But what if the disease is not present but release is needed? The price is up to $6,000. For that money, a fictitious certificate. The doctor made a diagnosis that didn't exist, entered the record into the database. He drew up the documents. The person received a legal exemption. The scheme had been running for months. The doctors at TCC were part of the system, shared the money with the management. Everyone's in on it. By the year 2023, the extent of the corruption had become apparent. Too many dubious exemptions, too much money, too many high-profile scandals. In August 2023, the president fired all the regional heads of the TCC, all of them, all at the same time, all over the country. Officially, massive allegations of bribery, whole schemes inside military commissions, money for exemptions, deferrals, transfers, millions. The purge is massive. Dozens of officials lost their positions, but it didn't solve the problem. The system remains. People changed, but the mechanism of corruption remained. The new leaders started to work according to the same schemes, but the TTC is only part of it. There was a border, State Border Guard Service, State Border Guard Service, people standing on the border, a lot of power, and it could be bought. Since the beginning of 2024, 18 servicemen of the State Security Service of Ukraine have been detained for corruption. 9 are involved in illegal trafficking. That's just the ones caught. Since the beginning of the invasion, more than 1,200 attempts to bribe border guards. The amount exceeded 15.5 million hryvnias, over $400,000, just the reported cases. How many attempts were successful? How much money went into the pockets of those not caught? No one knows. Specific cases. Lieutenant Colonel in the Ministry of Defense organized the transport of conscripts to Romania through the mountains. 7,500 euros per person. Service vehicle with beacons, military ID, access to restricted areas. Used everything to bypass roadblocks and get to crossing points. Several months of work, dozens of people, hundreds of thousands of euros, until they caught him. After the arrest, the system didn't break down. There were other officers, other border guards. There have been cases of group corruption, entire divisions, border detachment on the border with Moldova. Several officers made an agreement with the guides. For a sum of money, they turned a blind eye to crossings at a certain time and place. The guides knew when and where. The border guards received a percentage. The scheme collapsed when one of them got caught in another case and ratted them all out. More than 10 people are under investigation. Others have taken their place. The money is too big. A border guard gets a small salary, living in harsh conditions. Suddenly, the opportunity to earn in one night what he earns in 6 months. The temptation is huge. The Moldovan Border Guard Service reported 41 cases against its officers between 2022 and 2024. 41 cases, Moldovan side only. How much on the Ukrainian, Romanian? How many unsolved? The corruption was systemic, not isolated incidents, part of the mechanism that allowed the market to function. Some schemes looked almost legal, combining corrupt links. An official at TCC was issuing a fake release for $6,000. The man received the document, but it was impossible to leave. Martial law, second stage. The border guard at the checkpoint closed his eyes for a fee, or entered into the Shliach system as a volunteer. Another 3,000 or 4,000, that's 9,000 to 10,000. plus a commission to the organizers, 50 to 100%. That's $15,000 to $20,000. Expensive, but safe. He crossed the border legally, with documents, stamps, a record in the database. All the participants got a share. By 2025, corruption had become the norm. Everyone knew that money could solve almost any issue. They knew who to go to. They knew the rates, not just corruption. A parallel system within the official system, with its own rules, prices, mechanisms. The worst thing is that this system was necessary for the functioning of the escape market. Without corrupt officials, corrupt border guards, doctors for money, the whole market could not exist. The main players were those who wore the uniform, who took an oath, who had to protect the border. They became the most lucrative link in the freedom trade chain, and the most protected. Behind them stood the state machine, which rarely investigates its own corruption seriously. Right now, as you're reading this, someone is typing a message into Telegram. We help with the departure. Guaranteed, confidential, right in person. Someone's transferring bitcoins to an anonymous wallet. Prepayment for the Tisa crossing. 30% now, the rest after success. Someone is standing by the river at night. Cold water. A wetsuit that costs $50, but they paid $5,000 for it. The guide says, swim over there, they'll meet you on the other side. And the man goes into the water. Someone sitting in the TCC office counting money. $6,000 for a fake certificate. Another client happy. Another deal closed. The market lives. It works. It's evolving. Almost 3 years have passed since the 24th of February, 2022. But nothing has changed. Mobilization continues. The border is closed. There is demand. And where there is demand, there is supply. Moreover, the market has adapted. It's become more professional, more efficient, more ruthless. Large organizations with dozens of employees have emerged. They work like corporations: marketing, sales, logistics, security. Everyone has a role to play. Everything is calculated. Everything is optimized. Maximum profit with minimum risk. Prices have stabilized. The competition has worked out the middle ground. $1,500 to $20,000 depending on the service. Everyone knows the rates. Everyone knows what they're paying for. Technology has improved. Cryptocurrency has become a familiar tool. Hawala has integrated itself into the system. Darknet forums have grown reputational mechanisms. It's easier to tell the difference between a trustworthy seller and a scammer. Not by much, but still. But most importantly, the market has become part of reality. No one is surprised anymore. Everyone knows it exists. Everyone knows the approximate prices. Everyone knows someone who has gone that way. Word of mouth works better than any advertising. A brother told a neighbor. The neighbor told a friend. The friend told a colleague. That's how information spreads. That's how demand is created. And as long as the border is closed, as long as mobilization continues, as long as people fear war more than cold water or prison, the market will live on. Statistics are merciless. According to various estimates, from several 100,000 to 1 million men of conscription age have left Ukraine since the beginning of the war. Most of them legally, in the first days before the border was closed, but tens, perhaps hundreds of thousands, illegally. Someone swam across the Tisa. Someone walked across the mountains. Someone bought a fake ID. Someone paid to be entered into the Shliach system. Someone bribed a border guard. Someone got a fake doctor's note. There are many ways. The prices are different. Risks everywhere. But the result is the same. The border is crossed. In Germany alone, there are about 260,000 Ukrainian men of conscription age. This is the official statistics for the end of 2024 years. 260,000. Every 10th of all Ukrainian refugees in the country. How many of them left legally in the first days of the war? How many had the right to leave? How many paid someone to help them? There are no exact figures. And there won't be. Because no one will admit it. Because they could be prosecuted for it. But everyone knows these people are out there, and everyone understands how they got there. The Ukrainian authorities are trying to fight back. They are strengthening control at the border. They are toughening penalties for evasion. They are purging the TCC and the Border Guard Service. They are shutting down corruption schemes. But this is fighting the symptoms, not the cause. The cause is simple. People don't want to fight. Not all of them, but a lot of people. And as long as the war is going on, those people will look for ways to leave. And where there are those who want to help, there will be those who will. For money. The most cynical thing about this story is that the system works for everyone, except for those who die in rivers or go to prison. Conductors make money. Hawaladars get a percentage. Corrupt officials share bribes. Border guards turn a blind eye for a fee. Darknet forums take a commission on every transaction. Everybody's happy. Everyone has their own interest. Everyone benefits from the market continuing to work. The only people who lose out are the families of those who didn't make it to the other shore. Is there a solution? Theoretically, yes. End the war. No more demand. Open the border. There will be no illegal schemes. Solve the issue of fair mobilization. People will stop fleeing. But it's all in the realm of fantasy. The reality is different. The war continues. The border is closed. Mobilization is going on. And the market is alive. Let's return to the question we started with. Is it possible to buy freedom on the Darknet? Now you know the answer. Yes, you can. But it's not the kind of freedom that philosophers dream of. It's freedom with a price tag. It's freedom that can be paid for with cryptocurrency, which you can buy in a Telegram feed, which is sold by people in and out of uniform. It's a freedom that can lead to salvation or death in a cold river. It's freedom as a commodity, with reviews, with ratings, with promotions and discounts. Welcome to the most cynical market in war. A market where hope is traded, where bitcoins buy a chance at life, where every trade is a bet. And while you're reading this story, someone else has already placed a bet, transferred the money, walked out to the river, went in the water. Will he swim to the other shore, or will his body be found a week later? We'll know the answer later, when there's another number in the statistics, another story, another item that wasn't delivered. The market continues to work. Ads come in every day. Money is transferred every hour. People enter the water every night. It won't be over tomorrow. It won't be over in a month. It won't end until the war is over. In the meantime, welcome to the marketplace where freedom is sold. A market that never closes.